Clara stood just outside the heavy oak doors of the country club dining room. In her right hand, she held a single manila folder containing the exact documents needed to dismantle her family's entire financial reality. Inside that room, her parents were raising crystal champagne flutes to toast her brother Derek, celebrating the massive estate he had just inherited. Outside, Clara didn't make a sound, listening to the clink of the glasses and the laughter bouncing off the walls. She didn't need to kick the doors open or scream for their attention. When you have the absolute certainty of a paper trail backing you up, you can afford to wait for the exact right second to show your hand. To understand how they got here, we have to rewind 4 days to Tuesday morning, sitting in a leather chair at her grandfather's attorney's office, listening to an estate being divided. The reading was swift, cold, and precise. Derek, who hadn't visited in 5 years, received the primary estate. Her parents were handed control of the investment portfolios. Clara, who had spent the last decade managing her grandfather's daily medical care, received nothing from those accounts. Her specific inheritance was listed at the very bottom of the document. She was left exactly a single item: the heavy, scuffed oak hallway clock that hadn't chimed since 2015. Her mother laughed out loud in the quiet office. Derek leaned over, tapped his luxury watch, and told Clara it was fitting, since she clearly didn't know what time it was anyway. They were so busy enjoying the insult that they didn't bother to ask why a meticulous man would leave his primary caregiver a broken piece of furniture. Their absolute certainty that Clara was completely worthless kept them from looking any closer at the wooden gift. Back in her own apartment that evening, Clara didn't throw the clock away. Instead, she sat down on her living room floor with a bottle of wood polish and began carefully cleaning the glass and the oak casing. As her hand moved inside the lower cabinet, her fingers brushed against something strange. Directly behind the heavy brass pendulum, a slight ridge was cut into the backboard. She pressed her thumb against the corner of that ridge. A faint click echoed from the wood, and the entire back panel fell forward, dropping a cascade of tightly bound ledgers into her lap. She was looking at a complete shadow accounting system. The compartment held 30 years of original bank deposit slips, wire transfer confirmations, and handwritten ledgers detailing every dollar that had moved through the family. For decades, her grandfather had sat quietly at family dinners, while her parents bragged about their finances. He hadn't been ignoring them. He had been quietly building a legally binding archive, waiting for the one person he actually trusted to open it. Clara works as a forensic accountant. She cleared off her dining table and spent the next 11 hours mapping the paper trail. At the very bottom of the stack was a fully executed 2021 promissory note. This chart illustrates what she found. Her parents had siphoned money from her grandfather's accounts for decades, funneling hundreds of thousands to cover Derek's failed startups. He legally reclassified these funds as a formal loan against the estate, assigning the total debt directly to Clara's private trust. Derek inherited the $2 million estate, along with a $2 million debt now due to his sister. On paper, his net inheritance dropped to zero the moment he accepted the title. Back at the country club, Clara finally pushed the heavy oak doors open. The laughter at the long table died instantly. As she walked across the room, the silence spreading from chair to chair. Her mother started to say something sharp, but Clara didn't raise her voice or ask for an apology. She walked straight to Derek's seat and dropped the manila folder directly onto his dinner plate. She stated the facts clearly. Her grandfather had documented every dollar taken. The promissory note was active, the debt was called, and Derek had exactly 30 days to vacate the property before she initiated foreclosure on the estate. Derek opened the folder. The color drained from his face as his eyes hit the notary stamp and his grandfather's signature. The certainty he had carried for 30 years evaporated in seconds. You can manipulate a sibling into thinking they are the problem, but you cannot argue with a notarized promissory note backed by 30 years of forensic records. Clara turned and walked toward the exit. Her father finally stood up, shouting threats about lawyers, but his words just bounced off the walls of the dining room, devoid of any actual legal leverage. They had looked at the old hallway clock and laughed, assuming it was a useless joke. They didn't realize it was the only piece of the entire estate operating with perfect timing. Clara walked to her car. leaving behind a family who finally understood the cost of every dollar they'd spent. She had the documents, the signatures, and the patience to wait for the clock to strike.